Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 213, Fly Me to the Moon. The episode begins with Ash and the gang making their way to Bluefinland on the first of the Whirl Islands that they were on. However, along the way, Misty spots 4 Corsola, and she immediately reminds Brock and Ash how she really wanted a Corsola of her own, so that she could further her goal of becoming a water Pokemon expert by catching every water Pokemon, and also just wanting to catch a Corsola, because Corsola was cute as fuck, according to her. Unfortunately, the Corsola were getting away in the water, and since Ash and the gang were currently traveling on land, and didn't have a boat, they couldn't follow them, much to Misty's dismay, who demanded that Ash and Brock find her a boat, though they obviously couldn't, because a boat wasn't just sitting in the middle of nowhere. Brock then looks at his guidebook and states to Misty how it looked as though the Corsola were heading towards a nearby mini-island that was just barely attached to the first Whirl Island, being Pudgy Pidgey Isle. Misty can literally see the little island in the distance, and declares that she could possibly swim there if she tried hard enough. A man overhears this, introducing himself as a man named Wilbur, and states that that definitely would not be possible, also confirming that going on a boat wouldn't work either, as he points out all of the whirlpools that the boat would have to go through, since the Corsola were now going through some whirlpools, although they were fine, since they were experienced swimmers, who could swim far better than any human. As Misty spotted the whirlpools, she got extremely frustrated, as she yelled out, wishing for a way to catch the Corsola, and get onto Pidgey Pudgy Island, as she prays, hoping to receive wings as a gift, so she could fly over to them. Obviously, this doesn't work. Wilbur then reveals that he only said that you couldn't get to the island by swimming or by boat. He didn't say that there was no way to get to the island. After all, Wilbur also revealed that he was a resident of Pudgy Pidgey Isle, meaning that there had to be some way across, which Wilbur then confirmed was a rope bridge that crossed over onto Pudgy Pidgey Isle, thereby avoiding the whirlpools, since going into the water wasn't necessary. Wilbur offered to take Ash and the gang to the bridge, so they obliged and started to follow him. Along the way, Wilbur clarified that the reason why he knew how to get to Pudgy Pidgey Island was because he was actually a resident there, being a caretaker for some unique Pokemon that live on Pidgey Pudgy Isle. Brock hypothesizes that these Pokemon were Pidgey due to the island being called Pudgy Pidgey Island, and points out that in the guidebook there was a picture of a Pidgey. So the man Wilbur confirms that yes, the Pokemon he was looking after was a Pidgey. Brock questions what was so unique about these Pidgey, with Wilbur promising that he would show them the Pidgey and why they were so unique if they came to his house on the island. So Ash and Brock were now just as motivated to go to the island as Misty to see these unique Pokemon, so they eagerly ran to the bridge, along with Misty, who was now way ahead of them, meaning that Misty ended up getting to the bridge first. The rope bridge looked very dangerous, so everyone was hesitant to actually go on, but Misty wanted to see the Corsola more than she was frightened, so she decided to be the brave one and go on first, as everyone else followed behind her. Now, why wouldn't Wilbur go first? Because he should have been able to cross the bridge multiple times, so he should have known if it was safe or not. But unfortunately, a huge gust of wind then blows, and it spins the bridge around, and as a result of the bridge being flipped, it sends Ash and gang flying into the air along with Wilbur, but thankfully they don't end up dying, and merely just land on the other side of the bridge. So, all's well that ends well, I guess, as they were now on Pidgey Pudgy Isle, or Pudgy Pidgey Isle, whatever the fuck. Wilbur immediately gets up and calls out, stating that he had food for his Pokemon, and on cue, the Pokemon then come out, revealing themselves to be a flock of Pidgey, just as Wilbur had stated. Ash and the gang take notice that the Pidgey didn't look normal, they looked particularly fat. Wilbur explains that this was obviously why the Pidgey were unique, explaining that they were fat because since there were no natural predators of Pidgey around the island due to the whirlpools always tending to scare most Pokemon away, the Pidgey therefore didn't have to fly much to escape the predators since they weren't there, so they got fat since they weren't getting enough physical activity. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on Ash and the gang from their Meowth balloon, having arrived on Pudgy Pidgey Isle, and upon seeing these Pidgey, they were amazed by their size and determined that they should try and steal them, in an attempt to actually meet their daily capture quota from Giovanni for once. Back with Wilbur and Ash and the gang, they then went to Wilbur's house, apparently the only house on the island, although they had already spotted the Pidgey. As Wilbur clarified that there was still one Pidgey that Ash and the gang hadn't met yet. As if on cue, this Pidgey flies by them and lands on the roof of Wilbur's house. That's right, this Pidgey could fly, because, as Ash pointed out, this Pidgey wasn't a fat fuck like the other ones, and also had a hat and goggles. Wilbur then admits that this Pidgey was his favorite Pidgey, named Orville, being the only one that he thought was special enough to give nicknames to, explaining that he thought this Pidgey was extremely special because, even despite not having any predators, it still decided to fly simply because it wanted to. As if on cue, Orville then jumped off the roof and flew up even higher. As Ash and the gang questioned why Orville had goggles, Wilbur revealed that it was because Orville used to be a Pidgey used for delivering letters, which was another thing that made it special from the rest of these Pidgey. However, due to the advancement of technology, such as emails and video calls, sending letters wasn't really necessary anymore, so this Pidgey was put out of business, but despite this, the Pidgey still wanted to fly around and wear its delivery goggles. Hearing about how the Pidgey were now obsolete to technology, Ash and the gang were reminded of the Pidgey delivery service back in that one episode. Then, being reminded of the video phone, Ash and the gang realized that they should probably call Professor Oak and tell him about the chubby variant of Pidgey, thinking that he would probably be interested. Wilbur lets them use his video phone to call Oak, although under the condition that he was allowed to ask Oak a question. Ash and the gang agree, and when Oak picks up, they inform Oak of the fat Pidgey, and tell him about how they weren't really flying much anymore, due to both the fact that there was no predators, and also the fact that they didn't have to deliver any messages, explaining that they were chubby as a result. Wilbur then butts in before Oak can respond, though, and states that he wasn't actually sure if that was the reason why the Pidgey were chubby, since even though the Pidgey weren't flying, they still shouldn't have gained weight because of that. They just should have been not losing weight. Oak finally responds to both Wilbur's question and Ash and the Gang's initial statements by stating that he, along with many other professors, had heard about the Pidgey at Pudgy Pidgey Island, and a lot of them were very interested in them, trying to figure out if they were a variation or evolution of Pidgey, or a mutation. Or perhaps even a devolution that was a side effect of a Pidgeotto going back into a Pidgey. However, he liked Wilbur's assumption, along with Ash and the Gang's, that the Pidgey were just simply fat. He then answered Wilbur's question on why the Pidgey could be fat, asking him what he was feeding the Pidgey, leading Wilbur to reveal that the Pidgey would just point out anything they wanted, and Wilbur would go get it for them, whether that was food from trees or anything of the sort. Oak then hangs up, but not before declaring that he thought that humans should reconsider moving on from using Pidgey for delivery services. This led Oak to come to the conclusion that the Pidgey were likely just fat because they ate so much, and if they weren't flying, then they weren't able to burn off any of the extra calories that they were eating. Wilbur states, though, that the Pidgey had been fat before he arrived, leading Oak to remind him that the Pidgey could have just gotten all this food by themselves and gotten fat as a result, since it was a nice way to bond with the Pidgey and therefore learn more about them. With that, he tells Ash to call him again if he finds out anything new about these fat Pidgey, and hangs up. Suddenly, Orville then flies into the house and immediately gazes at a picture on the wall, which had several Pidgey flying towards the sun. Wilbur explains that the picture was painted a long time ago by his grandfather, and he based it on a legend of a Pidgey that flew to the moon and the stars. Team Rocket was eavesdropping on Wilbur's story about the painting, and Meowth instantly got jealous of the Pidgey in the painting, since he wanted to fly up to the moon as well, loving the moon, if you remember his backstory episode, where he would always go to look for it for comfort. Anyways, Wilbur then revealed that Orville used to be a fat-ass Pidgey, just like the rest of the Pidgey on Pudgy Pidgey Island. But when Wilbur told Orville of the story, he became motivated to fly up to the sun, just like the Pidgey in the painting. Unlike the rest of the Pidgey that he told, who were more interested in their next meal, being fat fucks. So, Wilbur decided to train Orville on flying, which therefore made Orville the regular-sized Pidgey that it was today. However, Wilbur clarified that, even with his assistance, although Wilbur was able to build up its strength every day, and be able to fly for a little bit, when Wilbur tried to give Orville his final test by flying himself up in a glider and commanding the Wilbur to fly along with him, Orville only managed to fly for a few minutes before it began to lose its strength and fall down towards a whirlpool, since they were flying over the ocean. Fortunately, though, Wilbur was then able to fly back up and had been able to fly perfectly ever since it had motivated itself by thinking of the sun and wanting to reach it just like the Pidgey in the painting before it fell. From now on, setting its goal to reach the outer atmosphere along with the sun. Although Wilbur admitted that he didn't know if Orville had the potential to actually be able to reach the atmosphere, since he hadn't tried to help Orville go that far. Ash and the Gang suggested that Wilbur should put some rockets or some devices on Orville so it could fly higher, but Wilbur stated that Orville would not like that, as it wanted to make it up naturally. Meanwhile, upon hearing Orville's goal to reach the sun, Team Rocket got an idea for a plan that could get them not only Orville, but Pikachu, which they thought was good enough, as they figured that with the Pidgey just being fat, they weren't worthy of capturing. Orville, on the other hand, was actually interesting. Team Rocket decided to stop dilly-dallying and go through with the plan, which involved them disguising themselves as meteorologists, and they then showed up at Wilbur's house. They planned to use Orville's want to fly up to the sun to their advantage, as they claimed that, being meteorologists, they were very interested in seeing how high up Pidgey could fly, and offered to help Pidgey reach his goal of reaching the sun, free of charge, clarifying that they would use their hot air balloon, which was the Meowth balloon disguised, to monitor Pidgey and instruct him on how to fly higher, lying that because they were meteorologists, they knew a lot about flight. Wilbur saw that Orville was very interested in this, obviously, and Wilbur himself was enticed by the deal due to the meteorologist, quote-unquote, being able to help Orville free of charge. So he said that the deal was too good to pass up, and agreed. James was happy about this, and began to leave, but Jessie reminded him that they wanted to get Pikachu as well, and told James to invite Ash and the gang onto the Meowth balloon as well, so that they could watch the Orville fly. James revealed that he was hesitant to bring Ash and the gang onto their balloon, even if it meant that they could get Pikachu, stating that Ash and the gang being involved usually led to them getting blasted off, but Jessie really wanted Pikachu, so James agreed, and offered Ash and the gang a place in the Meowth balloon to watch, and Ash and the gang, of course, happily agreed to that. Ash and the gang and Wilbur then agreed to meet back with Team Rocket tomorrow and go in their balloon. So for the night, Ash and the gang stay at Wilbur's place, while Team Rocket go back and sleep in their balloon. However, during the night, Meowth sneaks off and goes to talk to Orville, who was now outside by himself, sleeping on the house's deck. However, Meowth quickly woke him up and gave him a headset so that Meowth could communicate with Orville and give him instructions during his flight tomorrow, stating that he genuinely wanted to help Orville reach his dream of reaching the sun, unlike Jessie and James, stating that he always had a dream of rising above all the Meowth, which was part of the reason why he wanted to learn human speech, if you remember his backstory episode. However, Meowth stated that since he had no one to support his dreams and goals, he wanted to help other Pokemon like Orville with their dreams and goals by giving them the support that he never had. hoping that, in turn, when other Pokemon heard of Orville potentially being able to reach the sun, it would give those Pokemon the support to reach their dreams as well, and therefore, Meowth could have helped even more Pokemon reach their dreams by association. Meowth then puts the headset on Orville and gives Orville a speech of encouragement before he runs off, which gave Orville the encouragement he needed to actually go through with trying to reach the sun tomorrow. Sure enough, tomorrow eventually arrives, and Ash and the gang, Wilbur, and Orville board Team Rocket's balloon. Orville then begins flying up as James activates the Meowth balloon's rocket boosters to bring them up as well, so they could observe Orville. However, the rockets end up going too fast, as James isn't able to fully control their speed, because he's a noob with the controller, and this causes everyone in the Meowth balloon to fall down, although they quickly get up to see that Orville has already shot past the Meowth balloon, even though the Meowth balloon was now over 3,000 meters in the air, thanks to the rockets. This led Meowth to use his headset to talk to Orville, congratulating him on making it as high as he did, and encouraging him to go higher, also making small talk with him so that he could stay focused. And also informed him that all of his fat Pidgey brethren were watching him from down below, which they were, hoping that Orville could achieve his goal. As Meowth was telling Orville all of the milestones in terms of feet high he had reached, Ash noticed that Orville was approaching a flock of flying Spearow. However, Orville didn't seem to care, as it merely just breezed past them, flying above them. The Fearow didn't like being ignored by Orville, so they proceeded to chase him, wanting to attack it, leading Ash and the gang to get concerned. But Wilbur knew that Orville would be able to fend them off, and sure enough, he was able to fend them off because of how fast he was, quickly losing the Spearow, since they could not catch up to him. Orville, followed by Ash and the gang and Team Rocket, eventually make it as high as 10,000 meters, which forces Ash and the gang to put on some oxygen masks, along with Team Rocket and Wilbur, since they were so close to leaving the atmosphere at this point, they were losing air. It was then revealed that the still angry Spearow had called their boss, their Fearow, to get revenge for them by attacking Orville, so the Fearow flew up and tried to do so. Ash realized that Orville getting attacked could cause it to fall back to the ground, and therefore not reach the sun, so he decided to take action and ordered Pikachu to use Thunderbolt from the Meowth balloon, which was able to hit Fearow and send it down. The Thunderbolt not hitting Orville in the process, because Orville was able to fly away. Just then, though, as the Fearow plummeted down, it hit Team Rocket's balloon, which ripped off the disguise it had, revealing the Meowth balloon's true look. Ash, of course, obviously recognized the balloon as Team Rocket's, and accused the meteorologist of being Team Rocket. Team Rocket knew they were caught, so they decided to admit their jig and throw off their disguises as they did their motto. Although, when they did their motto, they didn't state their plan to capture Orville, since they had genuinely become so invested, just like Meowth, in helping Orville reach its goal, that they decided not to capture him. Whoa, no way, a rare break from the formula, sick. Meowth was thrilled to see that Jesse and James were on the same page as him, and proceeded to continue to help Orville fly up by giving it encouraging messages and relaying it each of the new milestones they had reached. And eventually, they reached a milestone that was so high that even Pikachu and Togepi, who previously didn't need oxygen masks, now needed them along with Meowth, as they were beginning to get sick without air. So, Ash selflessly gives Pikachu his oxygen mask, Misty selflessly gives Togepi hers, and Team Rocket selflessly give Meowth one of theirs. Wow, another nice moment for Team Rocket. Right as Ash and the gang and Team Rocket put the oxygen mask on the Pokemon, though, the Meowth balloon's rockets that were attached then ran out of fuel, so Team Rocket and Ash and the gang could no longer go higher, leaving Orville to continue to ascend on his own. Eventually, Ash and the gang and Team Rocket and Wilbur see Orville reach an altitude so high that it begins to get cold, and frost begins to gather on its body, indicating that it was about to leave the atmosphere. Both Wilbur and Meowth begin to get extremely worried for Orville's safety, and tell it to quit and come back down. However, Orville talks to Meowth through the headset, explaining that it didn't feel any of the coldness, even though it did, and it really wanted to reach its goal, as it would make it really happy, so it wanted to push beyond the normal limits of a Pidgey and make it to the sun no matter fucking what. This leads Meowth to change his pleas for Orville to come down to demands for Orville to continue up no matter what, remembering his promise to encourage Orville to reach its dreams, not discourage it. This encouragement helps Orville actually manage to exit the atmosphere and reach space, as it admires the abyss of space, telling Meowth it could now see Earth and the moon, stating that he could almost touch the moon at this point, telling Meowth how beautiful the moon was, stating it was just like how he imagined it would be, although wished he could have saw the sun. Meowth, loving the moon, assured Orville that the moon was way better than the sun anyways, and ordered Orville to come back down now to tell everyone about what it had experienced, including him, since he wanted more details on the moon. Meowth stated he was proud of Orville, which pleased Orville enough, noting that someone had noticed his success, and therefore he decided to oblige to Meowth's request and head down before it froze due to not having any oxygen. However, with the awe of actually completing its goal having subsided, Orville realized that it actually was extremely cold and was beginning to lose oxygen, so it hurriedly began speeding down extremely fast, not focusing on where it was going, so it was about to crash to the ground. Meowth jumped in, telling Orville of this and instructing him to change his course to the Meowth balloon so he could land safely inside. Orville manages to fight through how cold it was and how close it was to running out of oxygen, and manages to use its wings to redirect itself to the Meowth balloon. However, despite changing course, Orville was still going too fast, unable to fully slow down, so it crashed straight into the Meowth balloon, popping a hole on it and landing directly on Meowth, knocking him out for a few seconds, although Meowth quickly got back up when he noticed that Orville was injured. Meowth instructed Orville to get up, but Orville couldn't, as it had run out of oxygen, so with no oxygen, combined with its injuries, it had now passed out, unable to get back up. Meowth was so focused on giving Orville oxygen by offering it the oxygen mask that Meowth had just put on, that neither Meowth nor Team Rocket noticed that the Meowth balloon was now descending due to the hole popped in it. Unfortunately, things just got worse, as Orville didn't wake up even with the oxygen, making everyone extremely worried. They then got even more worried, as since they were running around panicking, not knowing what to do, they finally saw that the balloon was descending downwards. This led Pikachu to know that it had to do something fast, so it decided to use Thunderbolt on Orville to shock it back to consciousness. Yes, that worked. As Meowth was shedding a tear of joy at Orville's safety, though, the balloon began to get too low to the ground at such a fast pace that it actually ended up making the hole in the balloon bigger, which in turn just made the balloon plummet down even faster. It seemed as though all Team Rocket and Ash and the gang could do was hold on to the Meowth balloon and hope that they didn't die when they fell. But thankfully, in a Deus Ex Machina moment, the fat-ass Pidgeys on the ground noticed the balloon falling and proceeded to save it by gathering up where the Meowth balloon was about to crash and then flapping their wings and jumping up, trying to fly. And although they couldn't get high up, they were able to make contact with the Meowth balloon's basket by headbutting it, which slowed down the balloon during its fall, meaning that everyone was mostly uninjured, only with a few scratches when the balloon landed on the ground. Although Team Rocket had ended up outside of the basket and onto one of the rocket boosters, which had since detached from the Meowth balloon. Presumably, this rocket must have been linked to the other rocket, so stopped working when it did. But now that it was detached, the rocket then flew up automatically, since it must have had some fuel left, and sent Team Rocket blasting off, since they were on top of the rocket. Damn, I actually feel bad for Team Rocket this time. They actually didn't pull any tricks and were actually helping out Ash and the gang the entire episode, and they still got struck by some remarkably bad luck. Damn. Just then, all of the other fat Pidgey went up to Orville and tried to fly in an attempt to impress it, leading Wilbur to suggest that Orville flying high up into space must have inspired the rest of the fat Pidgey to try and fly themselves, getting over their desire to do nothing but just sit around and eat. Ash and the gang then say their goodbyes to Orville, the rest of the Pidgey, and Wilbur, and continue making their way to Bluefinland. The episode then ends with one last scene from Team Rocket, who had blasted off onto a tree and were now hanging from it, by only their shirts. They were obviously annoyed by this, and were only more annoyed as Wobbuffet then forcibly popped out of Jessie's Pokeball and joined her by the tree. Jessie and James then realized that Meowth wasn't hanging from the tree with them and questioned where he was, only to spot Meowth on the top of the tree on a nearby branch, talking with Orville, who had landed nearby. Orville was telling him about his journey to the atmosphere, with Meowth questioning if the moon looked just as beautiful up close as it did from back down on Earth, with Orville explaining that it looked even better, making Meowth jealous, wishing that he could have gone up to the moon with Orville, since he loved the moon so much. Meowth then questions if the moon was made of cheese, and Orville gets Meowth's hopes up by not confirming or denying, stating that Meowth would have to find out for himself, making Meowth even more jealous at the fact that he couldn't make it to the moon.